on my computer. Okay, awesome. So I am very excited today that Julia from ISeeChange is here. She's the CEO and founder. And I just want to remind everyone that when we're speaking, please speak slowly for the interpreters. Whenever you see this, that means to slow down. I see it very often, right? Because I speak so fast. But the reason why I'm excited for ISeeChange to be here today talking to us is I'll tell you a personal story. Just recently when we had the tropical storm here and there was flooding everywhere, I've lived in my house for 11 years. And it wasn't up until I would say 3 years ago that we had flooding in our neighborhood to the point where I couldn't leave my house for 3 days. And that was from a tropical storm. And this storm that we just had was the same thing. Like I couldn't leave the house. We have a doggy, so there was nowhere to take her. And it was it's scary, right? Because these are becoming more and more frequent. So when that storm came around, I used the ISeeChange app to report flooding and to give updates to the city on like what's going on in my neighborhood, because it's something that's been rare, but it's happening more often. And they need to know where these areas are in our communities. And that's just one thing that this app does. There's many other things that it does. So I'm excited to introduce Julia and Claudia, who is also here from ISeeChange. And I will let you guys take it from here. Julia, I'm gonna give you access to share your screen. Let me do that right now, hold on.
Before I do that, before I share screen, Claudia, why don't you hop on and introduce yourself as a representative for us in Miami?
Of course. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Claudia Sebastiani. I am a former steering committee for the Miami Climate Alliance, and I'm very happy and proud to introduce Julia Kumari Drapking, our founder and CEO for ISeeChange, which is this community platform that help us engage in flooding and other climate impacts that you would like to share your personal stories on the platform that would help cities diverge funding into social and community projects. So more to learn here today. And Julia, please take it away.
It's just such an honor to work with such amazing people in Miami. Just an incredible honor. You all are so passionate about your town. Your organizations are passionate. Miami Climate Alliance, I know Claudia has been a member for a long time, and it is very impressive to see the network that you all are and the organizations that you represent towards a unified front on making Miami more resilient. I will try and keep eyes out. I'm famously a fast talker myself, so please don't even hesitate to go slower, like please. And frankly, you've set the bar pretty high in terms of language equity for our team. I'm proud to say ISeeChange is available in Spanish. We got to work on that Creole, so please keep us accountable on that front as well. I'm Julia Kumari Drapkin again. I'm the founder of ISeeChange. I was a climate science reporter for over 15 years for organizations like the Associated Press, the BBC, and award-winning newspapers. And I covered climate science and natural disasters. So I covered the Asian tsunami and Hurricane Katrina in the same year. It was a bummer. And some of your listeners to this, some of your meeting organizers probably weren't even born maybe sometimes. I've been horrified to realize how old I am when they're like, when was the Asian tsunami? When was Hurricane Katrina? But over and over again, for the last 15 years, I saw the same problem. And it unfortunately in 15 years has not been solved, but it's very familiar. Top-down, well-intentioned climate solutions are failing to meet and keep pace with our climate needs. Jeanette just gave a perfect example of that need coming out of our most recent tropical storms. So ISeeChange's technology is grounded in our mission that everyday residents, frontline residents, have critical insights to see, measure, and accelerate the solutions that we need to see in our neighborhoods. There we go. So I also see if there's messages in the chat and I can't read them because I'm in the middle of the presentation, just don't hesitate to jump in. Keep it conversational. So ISeeChange is a climate and data and dialogue platform in one. We enable cities to improve their climate modeling, their infrastructure design, emergency preparedness, and just as importantly, public and civic involvement and trust with our residents. We can't do anything if there's no trust. We can't do anything well if there's no communication. So in major public projects, we have quadrupled and then some. Maybe we've lost count. We need to keep track. Public engagement in processes in infrastructure projects. So, it takes time out of our days to be able to come to meetings. It takes time out of our days to go to a Zoom. But it doesn't take very long to engage on ISeeChange or to answer a question or a prompt. And so we've helped reallocate multiple millions of dollars in flood mitigation and soon heat mitigation to low-income neighborhoods. And it's kind of this collective intelligence, this collective place for us to all see what's happening together. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into the problems that we solve around, which are threefold. And on this slide, you can see a post and a couple of quotes from a familiar figure in Miami, Aaron DeMaio, who is a dedicated and advocate champion for Edgewater. We love seeing his posts on ISeeChange. But basically, when you think about data and engagement and where they're lacking in these public processes, there's a problem that's pretty big. 1 out of 5 public projects in the world are canceled or delayed because of communities' environmental or social concerns. And so when you think about the math of what that does to, say, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the climate, $47 billion in stormwater improvements, or $17 billion on EV charging infrastructure, not billion, some million. You see how much that cuts down the math, right? Like the investment is lost because we're not talking to people. And what are we seeing? Why are these projects breaking down? Well, firstly, our climate modeling data, a stormwater model, a heat model, sensor data, satellite data, it's not matching up with our lived experiences. And there's a reason for that. There's only so, I apologize for the construction noise in the background. These model data products can only get so close to measuring that problem. At best, they're 70% accurate. And so these block by block decisions need other forms of data and verification to be useful in infrastructure design. But ground truthing our data, our stormwater modeling, our sea level modeling, our heat modeling, our air quality modeling, name that modeling, is very expensive and very rarely happening. And as a result, we are designing things in the wrong places at the wrong sizes. And that's a big problem. And community members are also going, hey, the floods over there, but not over here, y'all. And sorry, I'm from New Orleans, and that's what we say. And that has happened in New Orleans for a long time. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the other big one that you guys are quite clearly versed in and understand very well is around equity. Our most climate stressed community members are the least likely to come to a meeting. They're the least likely to speak in English necessarily. And therefore their involvement as frontline members of our communities, it's inadequate and it's certainly not fair. And they have so much details to add to these processes. And without them, actually, I don't think that our climate adaptation or mitigation processes are as effective as they can be. And so that's why we designed ISeeChange. So our goal is to try and get everyone talking to each other and seeing the same pictures, the same, understanding what our experiences are, capturing that data that is so critical in our infrastructure design, and allowing these processes to be more efficient and effective, because we don't have time to waste arguing about it, quite frankly. Coordination, engagement, this is the stuff that's so hard to do. And if there's anything that we're not the heroes in these stories, we're just the tools that are accelerating and making them as efficient as possible. So folks in the Miami Climate Alliance can be the heroes with the data and the dialogue and the posts and the infrastructure projects and the policies that you all would want to see move Miami forward. And so I can kind of drill down into a few specifics around that, and I'm going to try and stay timely on it because I could go into as much detail on any one of these sites as possible. It looks like a traditional social media, but when we ask you details, we're able to validate and verify those details, specifically location, which traditional Twitter or Facebook or whatnot do not have and cannot provide. On top of that location data, the stories, the photos, we ask specific questions to the community. How long did the water last? So if it's 3 days, Jeanette, that's a big measurement. That's an actually critical measurement in a hydrology curve. When we ask you about your dog and what you did with that dog, that's a learning moment for other members of the community who might also have pets that they're adapting to this moment. All really important data. We sync each post on ISeeChange to weather data, as well as whatever sensor networks or other data products our clients have. So in this case, we work with the city of Miami on their stormwater modeling. All right. So what's great about ISeeChange is if you happened to be on ISeeChange, and we really want as many people on ISeeChange as possible, during that tropical cyclone, we were able to send active alerts and amplify what we were seeing on platform, what we were hearing from the city of Miami, and trying to kind of keep everybody informed as best we can. So you'll see that as an in-app message. Hey, someone near you is reported about flooding. Are you seeing it too? That kind of a vibe, that kind of a message. When we have additional information to add, we will try and include that in an email or in the notification. And those are not automatic. Those are sent by our team as well as our clients. So it does sound like a person because it is. Here's some example posts that we saw coming out of Miami. These are not just from the tropical cyclone, but also from previous flood events. And you can say that you can post anything from major floods to smaller events. And quite frankly, none of these photos are smaller events, but those smaller events are very, very important. But if you want to see the whole feed of ISeeChange, you can go onto the app, just sign up, and then you would be able to navigate to specific dates. So if you wanted to see what happened during the tropical cyclone, you could. If you wanted to see a storm that you remember, like from 3 years ago, I think there was a Memorial Day flood. So Memorial Day flood in 2020. I remember that one. Tropical storm Eta, but then just average rainstorms that you're just like, hey, I've got photos from this. Doesn't, you can see all those events. You'll also see lots of people posting nuisance floods, storm drains that are clogged that need cleaning. All of those are very, very helpful and useful and have direct response from the city of Miami. Another quick tip about flood reporting. We want to know how high the water got. You don't have to go out there and measure it. If you do, that's your choice. We want safety first. We want to know how long the water was there, when it finally drained away. If you want to track rainfall, we can get you a rain gauge, and we will be doing that, I think, in 2023 at a bigger scale in Miami. That means you could actually measure how much rain fell. And all of those details help the city of Miami understand what kind of flooding caused what kind of storm caused what kind of flooding. So some of these bigger storms that were multiple days, they will be like a 25-year storm event, maybe a 50-year storm event. It is really challenging to design infrastructure for a level of storm like that big. But a 2-year storm event or a 5-year storm event, or even up to a 10-year storm event, are in the boundaries of what some of the stormwater bond money or the forever bond money will be paying for in Miami and Miami-Dade County. So Jose Marti Park is designed to capture storm of a certain kind. And we want to measure those in particular because we want to know where those should go. And we want to know once those projects are designed, are they doing a good job? All of that is possible with something as simple as a story, a photo, and a few details about that storm event. It's real simple, but it's really important. A couple other things that we do on ISeeChange that are not just storm events. First of all, whoops, skipped one. We do heat reporting, and we will be doing this with Miami-Dade County. This is really important with regards to two things that I know you all care about: equity around health, because those who are most impacted by extreme heat, again, are the least likely to be able to afford air conditioning. And it's really important with regards to targeting energy efficiency programs. It's really important with regards to utility shutoffs. So we know that certain neighborhoods are hotter than others, and we know that certain residents are more at risk than others. So figuring out who that is, where that is, and how that is during each heat event is going to change city to city, neighborhood to neighborhood, house to house. And we do projects like that. So we'll be rolling that out with sensors in 2023, hopefully soon. But you can see that just basically heat is really hard to photograph because it's a feeling, it's a discomfort. So we do encourage people to use sensors to take pictures that are relevant to their air conditionings or their homes. And we can do really nitty-gritty tracking of heat events using ISeeChange. Quickly go through the other use cases. ISeeChange is useful for air quality. We will ask you like how your day has been impacted. And obviously we've had some air quality events, even in the East Coast, not related to, like feeling the impacts of West Coast fires. We do know that urban heat and air quality are related. So you can actually tag a post both relating to heat and air quality and tell us about it. You can tag things multiple ways. This is, of course, very relevant here to our friends and to all of you in Miami, is water quality. So we have a lot of posts about Biscayne Bay. We definitely documented some of the fish kill that happened, I guess 2 years ago now. We do know nutrient runoff and plumes or water quality are also really important to the community, and the city of Miami is interested in using ISeeChange to track that as well. So we will let you know as soon as that is live, if that's a go. But if you don't have to wait, you can post about any kind of water quality on ISeeChange, and it will go into the database alongside all of the other posts related to water quality. So how do we use this data? It's not just about reporting, just to report. It's like, how do we actually use the data to generate impacts? So I'm going to go through a few examples. One is an infrastructure project, one of our first, wherein, and I bring this up because there is a lot of infrastructure work that's going to be going on in Miami, greater Miami. So all the flood data that we collect, as in reporting to the city of Miami, can also be useful in validating and verifying design projects. Again, what I was talking about just a little bit earlier. So in low-income neighborhoods in New Orleans, we found that the stormwater models were underestimating impacts in low-income neighborhoods and then overestimating flood impacts in wealthier neighborhoods. And as a result of the community tracking 29 flood events, we were able to suggest that the model was redone. The model was redone, and as a result, $4.8 million was reallocated in stormwater improvements to the low-income neighborhood. So it'll generate 2.5 times the original design capacity of stormwater park than they had originally designed. So that is how residents can have direct impact into the infrastructure projects that are coming to your neighborhoods. So we do work with engineering firms directly on that, but we obviously are working with the city of Miami directly as part of our work in Miami. So that's one use case. And that brings us to the Miami use case, new deck. So sorry, my transitions are a little funky. So what is the city of Miami using ISeeChange? Well, first of all, when you report to the city of Miami on ISeeChange, several departments are receiving the data directly on the platform as well as to their inboxes at the same time. So that means the Department of Public Works is getting it, and they are able to send out work crews to respond. So they can deploy someone to clean a catch basin, or sorry, you guys call them storm drains. They can send a pump. So during Tropical Storm Eta, which was the first tropical storm we were operational with the city of Miami, we were instead of everyone complaining to the mayor or sending an email to their council person, if you report to ISeeChange, it goes straight to the person who's in charge of putting out the pump. So that means it happens faster when you report to us instead of putting it on Twitter and hoping that somebody sees it. And they probably will. And there's some fantastic memes. Don't get me wrong. That is an amazing meme machine. But if you really want service, report it to ISeeChange. If you want the project to go there to fix your flooding, report it to ISeeChange. That becomes real data that the city uses. So in addition to kind of that operational direct service request, capital improvements is also receiving the data, and they're generating grants to solve the problems. So the Office of Resilience used ISeeChange data to help generate a $20 million stormwater grant from the state of Florida. I mean, that was the data set they used. They used some, they wrote the grant, they received the grant. That's great. And that, again, you can trace back to direct citizens putting in photos and data and telling us the stories that we need to hear, specifically from inland communities where, again, stormwater modeling is really challenging to do in detail. So when I say there's a lot of attention nationwide and globally on sea level rise and coastal communities, but what's really hard to monitor and model is rain. And our inland in Miami, like most of Florida, like some of that high ground is actually closer to the water. And as you kind of go into the Everglades, it starts to dip down and it's harder to predict in the way it will behave. So a lot of this data really matters and has real impact. There were some other kind of certifications the city uses us for, but overall, they're really happy with it, and we're happy to continue and expanding with them. So there are new use cases. Again, we're working on heat with Miami-Dade and Jane Gilbert, and then other explorations. Ocean Conservancy tried using us for tracking trash. And what was really interesting about that was seeing that relationship between trash and the storm drains and flooding. So they're linked. So one of the great things about ISeeChange is you can post about multiple things and understand that they will have multiple uses going forward in the record. Heat. So we do this in New Orleans, and again, we're scaling this to Miami-Dade. We appreciate that historically there has been incredible institutional racism in our low-income neighborhoods and areas where people of color have historically lived. As a result of that, they actually are hotter. I think this is pretty well known, I would hope, in the MCA community. But how hot? Now, there's been a lot of efforts to drive cars around with sensors, but they can only tell you so much. We've done this work in Boston, we've done this work in New Orleans, and again, honored to be able to do it in Miami. We put sensors inside people's apartments, had them host them, and then we were able to measure outside in these neighborhoods and proved that the National Weather Service, not to its fault, was under alerting people in certain neighborhoods because their mandate is to send an alert to the whole city of Miami, all of Miami-Dade County. But if a neighborhood is 5 or 6 degrees hotter than other neighborhoods, they may not be receiving the same level of health alert that they should be. And so we were able to also prove that in these neighborhoods, certain folks were actually experiencing heat inside their apartments that was hotter than outside in Florida, in South. Imagine that happening. How does that happen? Well, landlords aren't servicing their air conditionings, and renters or people who live in public assistance are at much higher risk of extreme heat events when they're not in charge of their own thermal, what we would call thermal equity. Maybe because they can't fix it themselves, because they can't afford to have it fixed. Maybe they can't afford their bills. So people were detailing very intense stories. There was a lot of housing advocates, people who were on public assistance, who were checking into hotels, who had to sleep on the floor, even if they were cancer patients, like some extreme events. And they were documenting things like holes in the wall, mold in their ceilings. And so what we were able to prove out of this work was just how much housing policy is truly a climate issue. More so, planting trees is great, but if you can't protect people in their own homes, then they're at very high risk for health issues. And that's what we were able to do with this work. And we look forward to kind of adapting a version of this in Miami. So if anyone's interested in working with us, please let us know. Now, finally, this is what we're calling in design on ISeeChange, and I will show you a quick preview of what it will look like on the site. And we're tired of talking just about the problems. I don't know about y'all. It's about time we started talking about solutions. And it turns out, not surprisingly, is that community members are amazing at helping us figure out where solutions should go, measuring out what those solutions should, how, measuring those solutions in terms of their design or construction, and then evaluating them over time, right? So we are starting what we're calling ISeeChange solutions, starting with electric vehicle charging stations. We'll find this out as we go on, but the terminology that's become more common to talk about this is called charging deserts. In our low-income neighborhoods, we're seeing charging deserts. Electric vehicle charging companies are biasing the placement of their charging infrastructure to wealthier neighborhoods. One, because that's where EVs are. It's where people can afford them. Two, because the power grid is upgraded often where there is new developments and higher level income residents. So we're missing them in the communities that have a lot of air quality issues, who have a lot of equity issues. And so as public money for EV charging infrastructure goes into the states, there's no process that has been established to generate consensus as to where these EV charging stations should go. On top of that, a charging infrastructure station can vary in cost from $2,000 for a level 2 to $20,000, not to mention what an L3 charging infrastructure can cost if it means that the utility has to make significant changes to the way electricity flows. So by generating consensus amongst our residents where these should go, that they're safe to put them there, that there is going to be usage around them, and helping to leverage the data gaps between residents, community advocates, the cities, the utilities, the charging station companies, and the installers, which are all different. We have launched our first EV charging application, and it will be launching in Chicago in partnership with ComEd, and probably launching with Pepco as well, maybe in DC or in Baltimore. So the site is going to start to change. You're going to see a solutions tab on your phones and on your computers where you can request an EV charging station and upvote it. We're going to be launching similarly structured applications for stormwater infrastructure for rain gardens that people host on their properties, which also have a similar structure in a way residents can solve for this, as well as energy efficiency. But we're going to start with EVs, one thing at a time. And we do see this as a really valuable opportunity for any one of our communities. So if you're interested in trying it out or testing it, please let Claudia or me know. Saying, see Claudia, I'm like, Claudia. But I'm going to do those. So those were high level use cases. I want to go quickly on how you use ISeeChange. I'm famous for spending all the time on why and not enough time on how. So first, download the app. It's ISeeChange Tracker on iOS. It's ISeeChange on Google Play. And if you don't have a smartphone, or if you just want to use it on your smartphone without an app, it's just ISeeChange.org. I highly recommend the app because it makes everything so easy. You know, where you at, your location, your photo, all that stuff. Everything is easy and it centers on location, location, location. Here's the jam. We make it real easy for you to tell us your location. We will never make it easy for others to see your location. We will practice privacy. We do not reveal where exactly flooding happens on ISeeChange in the app. You'll see that we protect people's location data. That's really important. Same with heat, all that. It's only going to the city of Miami, who has vowed to do something about it, and they are receiving that data. But you will never see that publicly presented on ISeeChange. But it's very similar to social media. But we try and onboard you locally. We try and let you know what's useful. So the kinds of street flooding posts that are helpful, persistent puddles, helpful. Discomfort in a specific bus stop or intersection, helpful. Telling me the temperature or that it's raining, not as helpful. But interesting, but not as helpful. But if you want to just tell me it's raining, cool, fine. Telling me it's raining and it's not flooding, very helpful, by the way. It's okay to tell us it's not flooding. That actually is great. Adding pictures and stories is super similar to social media. Again, we ask you to tell us where you saw what you saw. If you're adding a photo, we will scan the photo and say, was it here? But if it wasn't, tell us where it was. You can move your little arrow wherever, the little dot, wherever it is. And that's where we say, okay, you are the expert. You tell us where this was. We use AI to scan to see and suggest tags. So once you put in a photo and a story, you can tell us it was, we'll say, hey, was this about raining? And you can click that, storms and flooding. But you can also click, actually it was also about trees because there's a lot of tree litter. You click that. You can click as many topics that you think is relevant to your post. Those tags open up specific data prompts. So for example, with flooding, we want to know how much rain fell, how long it started and stopped. We want you to tell how high it was, how long it lasted. We want you to tell us as much as you can. But if you don't know the answers to any of this, don't worry about it. Tell us as much as you can, but don't prevent that from telling us the story, period. These stories are actually some of the most useful information because I want to know about Jeanette's dog and how the dog did after 3 days. And Jeanette can talk to other people who had pets during that storm who might have had great ideas around that. So community building is the greatest aspect of resilience. Your neighbor is your first responder. And the more we connect to our neighbors, the more resilient we will be. Because at the end of the day, when you're in your home and you got 3 dogs, you need your neighbor to help you. They're going to help you first. And I have the same issues in New Orleans. When it comes to a heat event, if we've lost power, I know who I need to check on my street to talk to and make sure that they're cool. I know who to ask for a cord. I have a neighbor on one side is a generator and another neighbor on the other side is a generator, but my husband will not buy us a generator. So now I got to go beg for cords from other people. But I know I can get through a storm because I know my neighbors really well. This is the QR code. If you want to just jam on your phone right now, take that picture, download the app, go straight. If you got questions or you want to follow up, Claudia is amazing. Say no more. If you don't know Claudia, you should, because she's amazing. And we're honored to work with her. And I'm going to leave it for questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Julia.
I hope I hit my time metrics.
No, you are perfect. Can you stop sharing your screen just so we can see folks? Okay, awesome. And Ms. Jones, yes, go ahead, ask your question.
Hi, Neshma here. Thank you so much, Julia. I was so happy to see that you were here because Claudia was at the last MCA, if I remember, and she talked about ISeeChange, and I was like, oh, I need to hear more about this. So this is perfect. I don't know if this is a question for right now, and if it's not, I would love to like connect later on, but I know you gave us some just high level examples, right? And so my question is using ISeeChange, getting that hyperlocal block by block data, right? And eventually it transforms into a systems change, right? Engaging different stakeholders and some of the examples that you showed us, like the health department and other agencies giving grants. I guess my question is, do you have any examples of like residents who have seen ISeeChange, residents who have actually seen the change happening in their neighborhoods? Because we know sometimes when we get those like large grant dollars, sometimes those economic systems still come into play. And so I was wondering if you had any like hyperlocal examples, and of course, Jeanette, if we don't have time for that, I would love to connect with you, Julia, and Claudia offline.
Yes. So luckily for you all in Miami, I have some of my best examples of residents getting immediate relief. And that's because the city of Miami is our client. They have the subscription to ISeeChange. And so they are getting notifications directly from residents when there are problems and often responding to those problems on the app and letting people know like, hey, we're sending a vac truck. hey, we're cleaning out your storm drain. And they do that when they're able to. Like, unfortunately, we're not working yet with Miami-Dade County. So there's a lot of folks who've been using ISeeChange outside of the city of Miami. I can't say that Miami-Dade County is getting the data in real time. We try and share it with them and we're talking with them. But for those who are in the city of Miami, there is a direct response. There's direct service requests that are generated from your posts. Now, infrastructure. So those big dollars, those big projects. Why ISeeChange has circled around this space is that these are not, let me just to back up and say, fixing climate change is not like fixing a pothole. It has a different level of timeline, expectation on solution. And there are members of my team who actually abhor the word solution because solution is relative. Like, it is rough. I can maybe say there are infrastructure projects that are slated to go into a neighborhood that will solve for a 5 or a 10-year storm event at best. But there are certain kinds of storm events that are going to flood us no matter what. And that's actually why we really focus also on educating each other, making sure we have neighbor to neighbor response and neighbor to neighbor connections, because at a certain level, we have to just plan for there to be a flood event and making sure that we have residents who understand that. So some of the projects that we've worked on from the Obama era have not broken ground.
Okay, yeah, that's
Slowly, right? So you think about, again, that their timelines are years. And that means you have different mayors and whole different teams coming in and out of a city administration. Some people have been there throughout, and I love working with cities because I understand them better. When I was a journalist, I used to be the city bad. That you kind of trained in. I went to journalism school and they train you to be like city bad. Putting the finger on the city sometimes is like dunking on a 12-year-old. Like it's not like any one person or department's fault. Often it's like years worth of neglect from maybe 4 administrations prior or whatever. So when you have these infrastructure solutions come in, there's a loss of data, engagement, and record that happens in these shifts between administrations and these timelines being long. So one thing that we are proud of is that we have this continuous data that kind of can hold the line in terms of, here's what the community said was the problem, and bring that back up over time because it exists in an accessible way that everyone can access. Secondly, like as we go through the design process, the designs change. So you want to have, again, like a record of what the community said and what was priority and what was documented as the problem in those processes. And then when those projects do break ground, we can actually evaluate whether they were good. And let me just even rephrase that. Some things are going to work and some things are just ideas that we just don't know until we try them, especially when it comes to solving for climate change. We're in a whole new era of trying things that we've never tried before and figuring out how to learn them. So sorry if this is a long answer, but for example, take the Dutch, right? And if John Morales is ever watching this, I'm going to say hi, John. I think you're great. Thumbs up. You brought up, we bring up the Dutch all the time as okay, living with water, they have everything figured out in the Netherlands. I spent 4 months in the Netherlands incubating ISeeChange with Arcadis in Amsterdam during COVID. Very interesting time. And you realize, again, I have great respect for Dutch engineering and for Dutch ideas, but we can't just copy and paste those ideas in our communities. We are not living in the same place. So and don't quote me on this, I think this is the second time I've said this recently where I have a journal where I've actually written down the number, but a 10,000 year storm event to the Dutch that they've, proofed against with their infrastructure is our 1 in 20 year event in New Orleans. Right? We live in tropical places. We got algae, we got mosquitoes, we got invasives. Florida's got invasives like nobody's business. I don't even know what that slug is that my aunt sent me a newspaper report about. But like because I'm actually originally from Florida, by the way, so I'm from St. Pete, Clearwater. So my aunts are all like, watch out for the slugs, they're coming to get you. So when we create these natural habitats, green infrastructure around these, public places and on our coasts, like there are other kind of factors and variables that we need to consider. And of course, I don't need to tell anybody in Florida about how different limestone is and how it's going to behave in these spaces. So I really am a big champion of Floridians, everyday residents, joining forces with the best of designers and the best of engineers and the best of advocates within any city government or the state, really championing Florida-owned, Florida-designed solutions, because nobody in the world is going to be able to tell Florida how to solve this better than Floridians. I think that we're going to be learning with this data and these stories and contributing it, but we're just the tool for you all to use. We're not the heroes you all are, for sure. So it was a long answer to your question, but I would say that infrastructure is a long journey. And
To answer
I don't think the destination is clear.
Yeah, definitely not. And then, you see the kind of policy arm of this forming as well, as far as the cooling in New Orleans. I used to live out there as well.
Mm.
So I know there's a lot of people here on the call and who'll listen soon that, AC is one of the advocacy pushes that are happening here in Miami. So it's appreciated to see that too. So thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Any other questions? You know what I was thinking? Oh,
No worries.
when you had mentioned earlier on about the projects being canceled, like you said, did you say 1 out of 5 projects being canceled?
Wow.
And like I think about how they always go on and on about they can't get enough community engagement for these projects, right? And how this could be a tool like for them to use on a specific project to get feedback from the community like instantaneously. Like, okay, we want to do, I don't know, X, Y, and Z in this community. This is what our proposed project is. What do you guys think? And it's like, it could be like this, right? But the technology was not there, nor the desire, right? Not there to solicit this information. So I just see a lot of potential with this, and I'm hoping they see it because it is something that they can continuously use to their advantage to work smarter and not harder. So I appreciate it. I really do appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm excited to continue to use the app. Hopefully you guys are too. And if there aren't any more questions, I think we can wrap it up.
It's always helpful to also hear like what's great about your community. Like we have a lot of problems. If there's a cool animal in your garden and you're just like, I love this, or if you see a manatee in Biscayne Bay, throw it down. I mean, am I going to throw that into an infrastructure project? Not necessarily, but it always helps to know what people value, what makes people happy, what's to community build around this. And, we're not Instagram, we're not Nextdoor. we're a community-owned space in that regard. Like I think there's nothing more disconcerting, like during an event like you all just had, to like go on Facebook and like see I don't know about y'all's algorithms, but like mine is like kids and college and funerals and name my pets, and like I just want to know where the flooding is. Show me the flooding. And I think that it's nice to have a dedicated space where you know that this matters, where it's not just forgotten in someone's meme. That we actually use the information to try and return on investment to the community directly. So thank you for your posts, for your championing us. We are again a tool for you all to use. If you think of ideas or projects you would want to use ISeeChange for, get in touch. we're open armed and really value the networks and kind of the strength that you all bring as the Miami Climate Alliance.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia. Go ahead, Claudia.
A couple of things that I wanted to add as a personal story. Ever since I started using ISeeChange, we know that at the beginning of hurricane season, everybody cares about preparedness, but I never really noticed that that's when we get flooded the most. Take back Memorial Day weekend. And ever since, for the past 3 years, that's when we've been getting our worst flooding. And so this year, we're preparing for the first days of June, and we had this cyclone. It wasn't even a hurricane. It didn't even have a name, but we were already prepared because we knew that it could be a weekend that we could get flooded. And indeed, we got so flooded. You have seen it all across media platforms, and especially Brickell area has been flooding a lot, and which is my neighborhood. And I posted at 1:30 a.m. But interestingly enough, Public Works came after an hour and a half. It was drained. Why? Because I posted on ISeeChange, and I also wanted to to be the first lead and have others to start posting, and that's how they were distributed. They were sending more Public Works trucks into the areas that were needed, and so it really takes the community to really report and say, hey, this is where it's happening. So then the city can just immediately go and take care of the problem. And another thing that I'm really proud of is that, all the residents who shared their flooding reports in Alapata and Little Havana, which are neighborhoods that you don't think that they get flooded because they're on high ground and they're suffering from gentrification and all those social aspects. But, we don't tend to think that those areas would flood, and they have been flooding more than coastal areas. And so thanks to those reports, the city of Miami got funding, $20 million for those neighborhoods where they were first not accounted for. So that was a big plus for ISeeChange, but more than anything for those communities who truly need it. And I think this needs to just spread to all the neighborhoods that are not really maybe being overlooked, right? Because we're so focused on coastal areas. So I think it's so important. We have the tool, and it's free for everybody to use. We just need to really play with it, share anything and everything. And the more you tell your story, your personal story, the more engineers and cities can understand where the issue is happening and find ways of finding funding for it to really help us. So I just wanted to share.
Thank you. That was so perfect. I don't have that's it.
Thank you, Claudia. That's a perfect way to end it. So like I mentioned, I am recording, which I will stop recording now.